Cousins a flyer. I heard Amir Johnson being thrown around. I heard some of the
Yeah.
guys that play for their G League affiliated Long Island Nets. But imagine if they're just like, hey, Boogie, want to come try out? He'd probably say yes. He doesn't have a role in the Lakers.
Well, I mean, I think the other piece of this that's actually really quite interesting, if you want to go glass half full for the Nets.
It's hard to. I mean, I don't care about the Nets playing. Like, it's going to be fun to watch whoever's out there, but it's not like I'm going to be like, oh, yay, let's, surprise some people in the East. It's like, no, let's just get the guys that are sick healthy. That's really all I care about right now. But go ahead.
So I was just going to say, I mean, I think, you already know this as a Nets fan, but for the folks out there, the other guy who's not going to be playing is Nick Claxton, who had arthroscopic knee surgery. So a lot of these young guys are really just not going to be in there. I mean, maybe you can, if you want to take the bright side of this, you say, okay, we're going to get to see what Karis LeVert have, what he has, what Jared Allen has. We're going to really give them the reins a little bit. Chris Chiozza, Rodion Kurucs, John Musaf, those guys come.
Two big names. They're playing for, if anything, this is a prolonged audition to see who's going to have roster spots on what hopefully should be a contending team next year in Brooklyn. I think all those names right there. You have LeVert and Allen pretty much auditioning to not be traded for Bradley Beal or another third star. You have Joe Harris playing for a contract. It's well documented that he wants to stay in Brooklyn. I liked what I saw from Chris Chiozza. That's the thing, too. If Chiozza can shine as a backup point guard, then the Nets can trade Dinwiddie. They're paying him $11 million a year. And I'm attached to pretty much every young player from this core, LeVert, Allen, Dinwiddie, Harris, the last four guys standing. So I don't want to see any of them go.
Well,
from a financial standpoint, we'll see. But the two big names outside of Chiozza are Kurucs and Musa because, if they don't start to show signs, they're going to be looked at as busts.
Well, I hate to be, it makes it a little awkward after you say how attached you are to the young guys, but the other thing that's going on that's obviously been around the rumor mill is Kyrie Irving basically came out and said during the season, this is not good enough. We need to make some changes. And there has been a lot of chatter that could mean getting a third star, potentially someone like Bradley Beal. And one of the things that kind of struck me here, Jason, is, what an audition potentially here we could have. An 8-game regular season and then likely a first-round playoff series of at least 4 games. We're going to be talking about a 12-game audition for some of these guys. And let's say Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, they shine. Well, now suddenly if you're the Nets, maybe you have some trade assets to get another star to come to this team. Who knows who that is? Maybe it's Bradley Beal. Maybe it's someone else. But, I mean, it sounds like you've already kind of made up your mind that you'd rather keep the core intact. But, I mean, what do you make of the idea that perhaps the Nets could use this to kind of showcase their young players as trade assets?
I don't know how I feel because not only are those players part of the core, but they're part of the culture that Kenny Atkinson and Sean Marks established. That's the culture that attracted KD and Kyrie. So as well-respected as Irving is as a basketball player, he's not a GM. It's been documented that the two stars will have a say in who the head coach will be. All signs point to that could mean Jacque Vaughn is staying on in a permanent role, which means the assistants stay, which means KD's buddy Adam Harrington stays. He's an excellent developmental coach, worked well with Karis LeVert. So we'll see. I mean, the thing is, does Bradley Beal want to leave D.C.? John Wall's still waiting in the wings. We don't know what he has left after he recovers from the torn Achilles, but he's there. They can make a run in the East because the East can fluctuate from year to year with contending teams. Outside of the Bucks, we don't know who's really going to be there. You can maybe mention the Celtics, but, the Raptors could break up. The Sixers could trade one of their guys. The Heat cannot pan out. It's a crapshoot, at least. So outside of Bradley Beal, who's that other third star? I'd rather keep LeVert, maybe trade Dinwiddie if you can get a backup point guard for cheap, as much as I love Dinwiddie, and get a stretch four. You put Serge Ibaka on this current Nets team, they have no holes. They need a stretch four.
They need defensive guys. They need wings.
Trading away LeVert and Allen and Dinwiddie for Bradley Beal does not give the Nets more depth unless these other guys shine in Orlando. We'll see.
They don't have defensive wings to guard some of the best perimeter guys in the league at this point. I mean, Kyrie Irving is a negative defender, frankly. I mean, KD has always been a little bit overrated on that end throughout his career. their best defensive player is Jared Allen, who's basically in a timeshare at center. So, between them and Joe Harris, I mean, there's some defensive holes in this team. So I think in a lot of ways you're right, just in the sense that I don't know that Bradley Beal is going to really improve this team's ceiling, because Beal was once upon a time a good defender, but this year he really wasn't very good. If you have a backcourt of him and Kyrie Irving with Joe Harris and KD, that's just not a very good defensive team. I mean, it's going to be hard to be middle of the road, let alone top 10. And traditionally, that's where you kind of need to be if you want to win a title. So I kind of agree with you. I think they need to kind of hold out, because they really need some defensive upgrades on this team, I think, more than offense. I think if you're worried about an offense that's going to have a KD and Kyrie pick and roll with, rim runners like DeAndre Jordan and shooters like Joe Harris, I mean, then you really got bigger problems, because you have almost ideal offensive personnel. The problem to me for the Nets is going to be on the other end. Can they become a good? It
doesn't matter to me right now. I feel like I'll worry about that in October. I just want to get whoever's on the roster healthy right now. Like I was saying before, I don't know if I cut out, but my head is just so out of it. With the and it's not even just because the Nets are the hardest hit team by the coronavirus. It's just like the world we live in today. It's just hard to think about sports until we get a vaccine. Baseball's trying, basketball's trying, soccer's trying, the NHL's trying, NFL will be trying in a couple of weeks. To me, it's just like until we get this thing contained and people start actually wearing masks and listening, it's like we don't deserve to have sports. As great of a distraction as it'll be, I can't get there right now. I'm sure, like, once they give the green light and everyone inside the bubble's healthy, sure, I'll get excited to watch games. Yeah, exactly. I'd love to see the Pelicans make a run. I want to see if LeBron could get a fourth ring. I want to see if my homie Brook Lopez could get a ring with the Bucks. I mean, there are still a ton of interesting storylines. Just to me, it's blowing my mind how this virus is just affecting the entire world, not just sports. And it just feels not right to play right now, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things that has really struck me about what you're saying is how disproportionately it's affecting the U.S. Because when you look at other countries are having seamless renewals of their sports seasons, basically. I mean, the Premier League, which is by most accounts the biggest soccer league on the planet, has basically gone off without a hitch. There were some early challenges, but really there hasn't been much. And then you look and you say, well, how is that possible? And you realize that there's less than 12 million cases, just under 12 million cases in the world. About a quarter of those, Jason, a quarter of the entire world's cases are right here on U.S. soil. And so what's happening is we're just watching the U.S. be inundated with these cases. And if you take out basically just Brazil and the U.S., now you're up to 4.5. You put in India and Russia, you're basically up to half the cases in the world. So 4 countries basically have half the cases, and it just kind of speaks to the fact that, we can see that there are countries that are managing this better than others. The UK had a ton of cases, but they've cut those down, and it's allowed them to resume. And countries like Germany and some other countries have done a better job, frankly, than the United States have. And as you said earlier, they've followed the rules. If you look at the countries that have been most successful, it's because they're being compliant. People are wearing masks everywhere. They're being careful, and they're letting it kind of die out before resuming activities. And then there's a lot of proactive measures. And it's a little scary, I think. I mean, from 2 perspectives. One, from a health perspective, but also it's scary to think, this is going to jeopardize, obviously, all the sports season. It's going to jeopardize a lot of things because we just can't resume normalcy when the cases are skyrocketing, frankly. And in something like 40 out of 50 states, they're going up.
Yeah, it's scary to think about, man. That's why, I'm hoping this works out. But, like I said, if it's safe and they start playing, I'll be stoked. But if they end up having to pull the plug, I think I'll feel a little relieved just because this doesn't feel right. I know they're trying. They have to try. You know how much money the league is going to lose or any of these sports leagues are going to lose if they can't play games? So I get it. It's an economics thing. But also, I think health and safety should come before money. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to realize that.
Yeah, it's true. It should. I mean, it should come first. I think the piece here is that I do think I'm gonna kind of play a little bit of devil's advocate here. I think that the NBA of all the leagues, I mean, the NHL now has, and it's just weird to hear these words come out of my mouth, but the NHL has actually done a really good job as well, planning this out, the way that they've done this, being agile, and now going to Edmonton, Toronto, cities in Canada that really haven't been as affected, was a brilliant move by Gary
Better
Bettman.
than Vegas, yeah. Better than
I mean,
Vegas.
they
And
committed.
I love Vegas.
They
Yeah.
were close to committing to Vegas, and I think it was Chicago was the other one. Those were the cities that they were looking at, and they wisely waited. And you know what? I'll raise my hand. I said they're taking too long. This is going to cause problems. And ultimately, they waited. They made the right decision. And even if the season gets a little delayed for them, they're going to be in a safe spot. That said, I think the NBA's plan is a very good one. And I hope that one of the things that it does, Jason, and I don't want to just be like little Mr. Optimist here, but I hope it sets an example, because if you look at one of the problems, it's that, we're not going to get too political on this show, but there's been a large faction of people that have opposed some of the measures that have worked for other countries, and it's sort of slowed down some of the progress with kind of keeping this contained. And the NBA, one of the things that they've really done is they've taken the recommendation of the CDC, of the WHO, and of scientists, and they've basically applied them to the way to do this. And so perhaps if you're looking for a silver lining here, I think for folks who are looking at this and thinking the same thing you are, Jason, one of the silver linings is that these sports leagues can show the rest of the country how to combat this pandemic and how to be safe and how to get back to some sense of normalcy by promoting sort of the right things to do, wearing masks, social distancing, only doing these things when you need to, while at the same time, Jason, we haven't even talked about obviously also getting to have their platform for social justice and the Black Lives Matter movement. So I think that there's some things here that could end up being positives, particularly if it's handled the right way.
Oh, for sure. That was very well said. And it's not like the world's throwing one curveball at us. It's two major pieces of the world history are going on at the same time right now, which just makes it even more difficult to comprehend. But look, the show seemed a little dark and gloomy, so I think we could end on a couple of bright notes. Two guys that seem to be completely unfazed by everything that's going on are the Lopez twins, Brooke and Robin. It's well known that Brooke is one of my favorite NBA players ever. I absolutely love him. But the line of the week goes to Brooke Lopez because he spoke to Tim Reynolds. He's a reporter for the Associated Press. And he said, we'll see how long Adam Silver can keep Robin and I from going to the park, because Adam Silver said if you're staying at any of the resorts, you can't go into the parks because there are still guests going in there. But he's a huge Disney fan. Both the Lopez twins are. So how funny would it be, Ben, if you just see two 7-foot shadows, just like sneaking out of the resort, trying to go into the Magic Kingdom at night? Like, oh, the Lopez twins, they just make me so happy.
I mean, it's funny because even as you're saying this, like my mind is going to, gosh, I really hope that they really do obey all the rules. But you're right. I hopefully the Lopez twins and Myers Leonard look like they're going to have a grand old time while they're down there. Myers Leonard came out and said, that to him, and a few other guys have made this point too, that this is sort of like going to an AAU camp or something. I mean, this is, Myers Leonard likened it a little bit to soldiers going overseas and said, look, if they can go overseas for as long as they do, we can go down to Orlando for a few weeks and play some basketball. So I think a lot of guys are trying to make the best of it, and you're right. And one of the guys that I think you're about to get to, Jason, is also Dwight Howard, who's at a nice intersection here of all of the stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, if one is doing a great job at rebuilding his image, it's Dwight, because it was reported earlier today that he will donate the remainder of his salary for the 2019-20 season, which, according to ESPN's Bobby Marks, is $700,000 to a charitable initiative called Breathe Again. So kudos to Dwight Howard, who is doing something great, something that will help the Black Lives Matter movement and using his platform in a positive way